Okay. So what all have we discussed so far? So far we have discussed what is multimedia, some basic terminologies related to multimedia. Then we saw some multimedia data elements. Then we had a look at some applications also through a particular timeline, which is we saw document imaging, we saw electronic messaging, we saw audio and video, we saw image processing, we saw some applications of multimedia. Now today we'll be discussing some multimedia architectures, okay? So the objective of today's session is to study the different types of multimedia system architecture, okay? Now don't worry, you don't have to study any very complicated architecture as in microprocessors. This is something just which you have to just understand, okay? There's no very complicated architecture that you have to study. So today's agenda is to have a look at some of the important multimedia architectures. Okay. Now, so as I said, you just have to understand what is the underlying concept behind this architecture. Switch on your videos, everyone. Now, just like any system, just listen it like a story, okay? You just have to listen it. I'll not extend it for too long.
मैम स्टोरी सुना तो सब सो जाएंगे.
It's not a story. I said just listen it like a story. Yeah? Just like any other system, as I said, multimedia systems also have an architecture. Okay. Now, the question is, why do we need an architecture for multimedia system? So as you all know, a multimedia system has different types of media, right? It has images, text, audio, video, all those things integrated together. So all these things might be integrated together using different technologies. So basically you have different types of data, different technologies, all these things. So when you have all these different things, what is the problem? Where do you want to play or use your multimedia applications? On a system, right? So you want the same application to work on a Windows system, and at the same time you want that application to work on an Ubuntu or iOS or any other platform, right? So you want the same application to work on different platforms. So when that is the scenario, you need an architecture. You need a common base or something that allows interoperability. That is why we need an architecture, because in multimedia we have different types of data integrated, different technologies used to come up with an application, and you want your application to work on all platforms. So we need some common baseline or guideline that will allow your application to be interoperable. That is the reason why we need an architecture. Okay. So basically you want your application to work on Windows, Ubuntu and all platforms at the same time. Now, the problem was in earlier days when multimedia became popular, that is in the 1990s, when they wanted to run a multimedia application, the PC alone was not enough. They needed additional hardware because every PC at that time did not have these capabilities like webcam and all, right? Graphics card and all. So there was a requirement of additional peripheral devices and additional hardware for playing these multimedia applications. For instance, they required these digital signal processors. DSPs were required to play multimedia applications. Additional webcams, scanners, many other peripheral devices were required to play multimedia applications at that time, because all these capabilities were not integrated in your PC. So all these additional hardware were required. And for every operating system, they had to make too many changes. For the application to work on different operating systems, they needed additional software, additional drivers, all those things. Now, the purpose of having an architecture is to minimize the additional hardware, or your application should work on all platforms with minimum hardware, minimum additional peripheral devices, minimum additional software, minimum additional drivers and application interface. So that is the objective of having a architecture. Your application should work on all hardware interfaces with minimum additional software and hardware. So a process of standardization started coming up. You know what is meant by standardization, right? Having a common platform. So they started working on the standardization. So they started working on building APIs, application programming interfaces, building drivers and all, software drivers, which would help our applications to be interoperable. Okay. Another important requirement was to have common formats. In addition to having uh, software drivers and APIs, one important requirement was common format. That means if you are working with an image data and on one PC JPG works and on another operating system or on another platform, if your image in JPG format does not work, maybe you'll have to translate it into another format like BMP or something else. That was also a problem. So you wanted all your multimedia content to have a common format also that would play or work on all PCs. So this is what is called as standardization. Okay, your multimedia application should work on all hardware interfaces. It should work on all operating systems. It should work on the format should work on all PCs. Okay, so they started building these APIs which support interoperability. They started building drivers which support interoperability, and they started replacing hardware components with software components. For instance, at that time, for compression and decompression, when multimedia is there, you know that there's huge amount of data, right? So when there's huge amount of data, you need to apply some compression and decompression algorithms, right? At that time, compression and decompression boards were used. Then they started replacing all those such components which were hardware in nature with software. So all these hardware components, wherever it was possible, they started replacing it with software. And when they replaced those hardware components with software, additional drivers were required, additional APIs were required. Okay. Then came so that was how a requirement of a common architecture came about. Now I'll show you can see a beautiful diagram over here. This is the first architecture. This is the first multimedia system architecture, which is called as multimedia workstation architecture. Okay. So what can you see here? You can see a diagram. Here, just have a look at the left side of this diagram. Okay. This left part, this partition. What can you see? What is there at the bottom? At bottom, you can see the hardware, system hardware. Then you can see the operating system. Then you can see the GUI. And on top of that, you can see the application. So that is how our PC is, right? We have hardware, then we have a GUI, we have the operating system who will act as a mediator between the hardware and the software, right? GUI part. So OS is basically a mediator. And on top of your operating system and GUI, you have all the applications. So this left side resembles your PC, correct? This left side of this diagram resembles your PC, your normal systems architecture. Hardware, OS, GUI and applications. Now if you look at this right side, this is your PC with some additional capabilities. What are these additional capabilities? Now this side of your PC does not support multimedia capabilities. Okay, this is a normal PC. Now when you want your multimedia system to support multimedia applications, you might want as I said, you might want some additional hardware devices. You might want some additional drivers. The drivers could be software or hardware. You might want some APIs as well, correct? So you might want all these three things in addition if you want your system to support multimedia capabilities, correct? So you can see here, this is add-on multimedia devices and peripherals. So you might require webcams, you might require mouse, you might require joystick, keyboard, or any input-output device like that. Additional device you might require to play your multimedia application. And if you have additional hardware, then obviously you will require driver support for your hardware. You may require hardware drivers and software drivers. And in addition to that, you will require some common APIs, standalone independent APIs that will make your application run. So this architecture is what is called as multimedia workstation architecture. Okay. So this is the first architecture that you have to understand. So there's no complex diagram as such. This is the diagram which you can easily remember. How do you remember? In addition to your architecture of your normal PC, you require additional hardware or peripheral devices. You require some additional drivers and you require some additional APIs so that our application works on multiple platforms. So this architecture is what is referred to as multimedia workstation architecture. Okay. So this is the same thing which I've explained now, the explanation of multimedia workstation architecture. Now we'll have a look at the next architecture, which is called as the IMA architecture or IMA architectural framework. Okay, so there are three main architectures in multimedia. One is the workstation architecture. The second one is the IMA architectural framework. And the third one is the network architecture. Okay, so three main architectures are there in multimedia. So the second one is this one, which is called as IMA architectural framework. Now IMA stands for Interactive Multimedia Association. Okay, that's nothing but a task group, a group of people or an organization of people who are working with interoperability, who are working to develop new standards so that all our multimedia applications are interoperable in nature. That's nothing but a task group, IMA. And our architecture is named after that task group, which is IMA. So the second architecture is called as IMA architectural framework. Now they focus on two important things, okay? They have two important things of focus. One is desktop focus and the other is server focus, okay? So they are basically concentrated upon developing applications which are interoperable on all desktop PCs. That means what are they focusing on? They are focusing on the formats. That is the format of all different data types. Text format, image format, file format. They are working to ensure that all your data types, whatever data types you have, they have a format which will work on all platforms. Okay. So you need not translate your image or text from one format to another when you are when you're doing portability. That is when you're porting your application from one PC to another. So desktop focus means they're focusing on formats, the formats of your data types. The second thing is server focus. So in the case of server, what they are focusing is they're trying to come up with libraries, as many libraries as possible, which will help you to play your multimedia applications. So if you are playing a streaming content, okay, if you're playing an interactive content or streaming your multimedia content from some server or some cloud, you need libraries to support that. So they are also focusing on developing these libraries so that your multimedia applications, especially those which are streaming in nature, okay, streaming multimedia applications can be played on servers which are from multiple vendor platforms, okay, on systems which are from multiple vendor platforms. So that is what the second architecture is about. Now how do they do this? They do this by developing a bus interface, okay. So their focus is on developing is achieving this interoperability by developing a bus interface. So as you can see here, so they define what is called as bus interface bus. Now a diagram will make it clear to you, okay. So this is the diagram which demonstrates the IMA architectural framework, okay. So here you can see this is one workstation and this is another workstation, okay. So you can see here, as in our previous workstation architecture, there's a hardware layer, then there's a systems compatibility layer, and there is an application compatibility layer. That means basically in hardware layer you have all the peripheral devices. In system compatibility layer you have the drivers, hardware and software drivers, and in application compatibility layer you have the APIs. So this is nothing but your workstation, okay. So this is one workstation and this is another workstation. So the portion which is on top is nothing but it's equivalent to your workstation architecture. Now you can see here there's a bus in between. This is our multimedia interface bus. So now what is the purpose of this multimedia interface bus? It ensures that from wherever you're fetching your content, okay, I told this is mainly in reference to streaming content. So whether you're fetching your content from a wireless area network or from a file server or from a network file server or from a CD-ROM or a device like storage device like Jukebox, from wherever you are streaming your content, whatever is your multimedia source. So whatever is there here is your multimedia source. This is your multimedia source from where you are fetching and playing your content. So from wherever you are fetching and playing your content, that content should be playable, or you should be able to run your application on your workstation. So that is done by developing this such interface buses which are compatible with all types of platforms, all types of systems from different vendors. This architecture is what is called as IMA architecture. So IMA is focused on developing interface buses, which will help you to play your multimedia applications, especially streaming content from whichever source you are downloading it on your workstation. Okay, so this is the second architecture, which is called as IMA architecture. Now the third architecture is called as a network architecture. Okay, now in a network architecture, so we know that when we are using multimedia applications, majority of our multimedia applications are the ones whose source is from internet, right? Most of the multimedia applications that we use, its source is internet or the World Wide Web. And when we use the internet, there is a problem that will arise, which is called as congestion. Have you come across this term before, congestion? What is congestion?
And there's too much traffic on a channel.
Yes, too much traffic, just like you have on your roads. If you have too much data being transmitted, packets of data being transmitted, and your router is not able to process that, such a situation is called as congestion. Okay, so when we know that multimedia means, earlier days it was only about text and images. Now it's all about audio and video and streaming content. So when there are too many people trying to access something or download something, what will happen? There'll be congestion in the network, right? So that creates a lot of problem in multimedia networks. So given are some of the reasons because of which congestion occurs in the network when we use multimedia applications. So you know that when you want to run multimedia applications, you need very high computing power, right? You might require an NVIDIA graphics card or a very good processor that supports your game or any application, right? So when you are using multimedia applications, you have increased computing power on your desktop PCs, workstations, or whatever it is. You need high PCs with high processing capability with additional graphics card and all. That will impose some sort of constraint on your application or on your network. Okay. Now, majority of the businesses or organizations have this large amount of data being transmitted, okay, as a part of their work, which includes voice, data and video and all. That will impose a lot of traffic because most of the organizations today are have shifted from paper-based workflow to an internet-based workflow, right? So that will impose a lot of traffic. Now this will cause a lot of traffic on the, when you continuously use multimedia applications, it will cause a lot of traffic on the what is called as the backbone networks. Okay, not on your the network in your organization, on the backbone networks which connects your organization and the ISDN, the network provider. Okay, so there are backbone networks based on different technologies like ATM, SONET, Ethernet and all. So it will cause a lot of traffic on the backbone networks, and most of our machines, workstations that we use are based on clients and client server architecture. So you have one person requesting for data and another person responding. That will impose some traffic. All the majority of the multimedia applications are graphic intensive. You have a lot of data being transmitted, large volumes of data, and you have too many number of users accessing the network at the same time when it comes to multimedia, okay, streaming content. So because of these reasons, there'll be a huge amount of congestion in your network. And we need an architecture or some standard that will resolve this problem of congestion. So that is how the third architecture came about, which is called as a network architecture. Okay. So in order to solve this problem of congestion, they use a strategy. Okay. That strategy is called as task-based multi-level networking. Okay. What they did is, instead of imposing the burden upon all the workstations, they started to categorize these applications based on the kind of data that they use or based on the speed that they require. That is, they started dividing. Suppose you are requesting for some service from the internet. You might be downloading some file, or you might be want to watch some streaming content. So they'll classify all these requests in different categories. Requests for textual data, requests for streaming content, requests for audio. So they started making classes of services, okay? Based on the kind of data required, based on the speed that is required, they started classifying the tasks into different. Okay, so that is task-based networking, where you do not put the burden on all the workstations. Instead, you adjust the class of service to the kind of requirement that particular user has. Okay, so you have these different classes like data transfer for text, images, audio and video clips, data duplication and data replication, etc. So data duplication is when the user wants to have multiple copies of that object, but that need not be synchronized in nature. So as I said, if there are multiple copies of the same data, and if you're making an updation to one copy, if that need not be synchronized or reflected in other copies, that is called as duplication. And if you want all your copies to be updated with that change, that's called as replication. So these are the last two categories. So when you classify your task based on this and then allocate network resources based on these classes. That means if you want, somebody wants to just download a file, a PDF file or a textual file, he will be allocated only that much amount of bandwidth and resources as required by that task. Okay, now in case of a person who is consuming or who wants to play an audio or video file, he'll require more resources, right? So he'll be allocated more bandwidth. So when we have multimedia applications, it imposes a kind of burden or congestion on the network, and in that scenario we require very high speed links. Okay, so two technologies that were developed in the 1990s for especially for supporting multimedia applications were ATM and FDDI. Okay, let's see what is ATM and FDDI. ATM stands for asynchronous transfer mode and FDDI stands for fiber distributed data interface. Okay, these were two technologies that came up in the 1990s especially for and proved to be a great boon for multimedia applications. Now let's see the first one, which is called as ATM. I don't know how many of you have come across this term ATM. Just understand that ATM is a networking technology. Just like you have your IP Ethernet technology, ATM is also a network technology. But the difference between IP Ethernet and ATM is that in the case of IP Ethernet and all, you have variable size packets. Whereas in the case of ATM, it uses fixed size packets. That means whatever data is to be transmitted, it is sent as fixed size packets with a size of 53 byte. Okay, so all the data will be sent as fixed size packets of 53 bytes. That means where 48 bytes is of user information and 5 bytes is header information. Okay, that's one difference. Another difference between ATM and other technologies is that in the case of ATM, first a virtual connection is established between your source and destination. Suppose you want to send a data from a particular source to a destination, a virtual circuit, it's kind of dedicated path that is established between the source and destination, and then only your data is transmitted. Okay, whereas in the case of your IP, your Ethernet and all, it's packet switching. They could take any path which is available, right? But that's not the case of ATM. It has a virtual path or circuit established first and then data is transmitted only through that path. Now the problem with this approach is that whenever there is a traffic surge, okay, that path cannot handle it. That link will not be able to handle a sudden traffic surge. That is the problem with ATM. It imposes huge, traffic surge will impose huge burden on that link, maybe resulting it to crash. Okay, so that's the problem with ATM. Another drawback of ATM was in terms of the cost performance or price performance ratio. Ethernet and other technologies proved to be more beneficial in terms of that price performance ratio. That was another reason why ATM lost its popularity. So in the 1990s, ATM was used in your ISDN networks and in the public switch telephone network. So in all those networks, ATM was used very popularly in the 1990s. But later on, with the emergence of fast Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet, and IP related technologies, ATM became kind of obsolete. Okay. So the main advantage of ATM is low latency, and you have a kind of virtual circuit dedicated path. and data is sent as fixed size packets. Okay. So this was developed primarily for transmission of multimedia applications, audio and video. The next technology that came up in the 1990s was FDDI, Fiber Distributed Data Interface, which was based on optical fiber technology, technology. This was successful in giving speed like around 100 Mbps, okay? Whereas at that time, Ethernet was having a speed of like 10 Mbps only. Later on, Fast Ethernet and Giganet Ethernet came up with very high speeds, but at that time, FDDI was capable in giving Ethernet, network speed up to 100 Mbps, okay? So it was also very popular, especially in the mid 1990s. But later on, with the emergence of other technologies like IP and Ethernet, FDDI also started becoming less popular. Okay, and FDDI, because of its high speed, was a very good choice for high performance backbone networks. Okay, in order to extend the current LAN, whatever your local area network was there, that could be extended with the FDDI technology. So these are the two network technologies which was very prominent in the 1990s, okay, which was particularly very useful in the transmission of multimedia content. So this was what I planned for today. So the probable university question that you can expect is to explain the different multimedia system architectures. Okay. So we saw the three architectures. The first one is a workstation architecture. The second one is the IMA architecture. And the third one is the network architecture based on task-based multi-level networking. Okay. So we'll meet in the next session and we'll be discussing about different multimedia mediums.